Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, candidates. Hugh Hewitt. Friday, May 22nd, in the year of the plague, 2020. 5.11 million people have the coronavirus thanks to the People's Republic of China's Chinese Communist Party. 333,000 are dead. In America, 1.61 million of our 330 million citizens have the virus. 95,087 is the official death toll as I begin this Friday morning and you begin your Memorial Day weekend. Stay safe this weekend. Therapeutics are on the way. Vaccines are in development. Americans have flattened the curve. Things are reopening across the country, but don't go a little bit crazy. I'm looking at a picture of a beach concert in Tel Aviv last night. Basically, the Israelis have said, that's it, we're done. 5,000 people went out to dance to Good Vibrations last night. We're not done. Be careful. Be careful out there. That's what Hill Street Blues used. Remember the sergeant in Hill Street Blues? I can't remember his name. Be careful out there. That was what he always enjoyed in his war room as they went about their things. Big headlines of the morning. Wall Street Journal, China plans new national security laws for Hong Kong. We've got the British Telegraph. China's regime pledges to clamp down on dissent in Hong Kong at National People's Congress. On the Financial Times, Hong Kong stocks dive on China's plans for security law. Wall Street Journal editorial, China moves on Hong Kong. You got the point. Xi is cracking down when he can while the world is absorbed in the virus he launched recklessly, negligently, not intelligently, not intentionally, according to everything we know and can surmise from the intel agencies. But that does lead me to the financial story of the day, so I'll do it right now thanks to HughGold.com and our friends at Birch Gold. Birch Gold has been supplying gold to you, whether for your IRA by diversification via texting my name Hugh to 474747. They'll send you free information on how to do it. They physically store gold in the amount that you roll over to their trusteeship. They'll take care of it for you. You can go and look at it if you want to. It's a physical depository of gold and silver, and I think you should diversify part of your retirement into precious metals. And Birch Gold has got the best business reputation. That's why they're on this show. If you want to buy gold as well as diversify your retirement, just again, text Hugh to 474747 or go online to HughGold.com. Do it today. Do it all on Memorial Day weekend. Good time to get it done. Gold is up to 1737 as we speak because the Hong Kong index is down 5.5%. That's right, 5.5%. Most market moves are like, you look at England, which is open this morning, it's down a point and a third. Germany down 0.85%. The United States yesterday in its markets, we're off 100 points on the Dow, down 90 on the NASDAQ, down S&P 23. It was a red day yesterday, but these are 0.75% moves or 0.41% moves. 5.5% is collapse and panic time in Hong Kong because Hong Kong hears the tread of jackboots and the tire tread of tanks coming closer to them, and that's what President Xi is. It's just good old-fashioned communism come back. I have a column over on the front page of the Washington Post. Some people read this column and say, that's a great column. That's an amazing column. And I must confess who wrote it. Yes, it is me. It is me. So here's the deal. Enough of c'est moi. That's it. It's me. I have been thinking about the generation born 1939, 1938 to 1953. They are Generation Fear. They got the raw deal. If you were born between 38 and 53, or mom and dad were, your grandpa and grandma were, they were screwed by the lottery in America. I write, and this is the Washington Post. Send it around to everyone who's that age. Fear comes in vintages. Each generation has its gut check moment that defines all that comes after. The global pandemic of 2020 will work that way on everyone under 50. But my bet is that it is particularly haunting for those approaching the winter of their lives. Bob Dylan was born in 1941. Joan Baez the same year. Director Martin Scorsese a year later. No wonder that Scorsese has been fascinated with these two singer-songwriters. They've lived parallel lifespans. Last year, 2019, Scorsese released Rolling Thunder review of Bob Dylan's story, which was deemed a mesmerizing motion picture by one influential critic. Anyone in the audience for the afternoon show at the Boston Music Hall on November 21, 1975, or any of the other 56 shows of that tour agreed. Catching Dylan in the mid-'70s was a unique experience. The music of that brief post-war Vietnam era was wildly mixed up. Great fun, not linked to protest or politics, except for some faint echoes of the decade before. A jumble of great sound just before it all degenerated into disco. The makers of the music were coming off a young adulthood full of drama and dread. That many of the great artists and their fans of that era collapsed into a fatigued relief after so many years of intensity seems, well, inevitable in retrospect. Many of today's decision makers in America are of the Vietnam protest era, including President Trump, born in 1946, Anthony Fauci and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, both born in 1940, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and former Vice President Joe Biden, who would take the controls from Trump, were both born in 1942. Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer is a child among them. He was born in 1950. Most don't remember World War II, but they all heard a lot about it, and the Great Depression, and they can recall the Cold War with its duck and cover drills in full. Being scared a lot, no doubt, scarred them all, at least a little. Just a few years, but an entire cultural era behind them come Vice President Pence, born in 1959, Deborah Birx, born in 1956. That's the blessed year, I call it. The best year ever to have been born. And I can defend that at some length some other time. Not for the mid to late boomers, any of the anxiety-laden years of the Cuban Missile Crisis or worrying about the draft or being dispatched to Southeast Asia. The cutoff from anxiety after age 18 comes for those born around 1953. Arrive in that year or later, and you and your friends weren't going to be drafted. Other fears clobbered the younger set. AIDS and its deep paw hit all the boomers hard. His friends and family grew sick and many died. Financial shocks and far worse became the norm for everyone born after 1960. 3 or 4 economic swoons have seared all who are now of working age. Senseless terrorism and 9/11 would sear every American with eyes to see. But the politically powerful people named above, Trump and Pelosi and McConnell and all Biden, they all hail from a generation that was reared in fear. Most of that age cohort are connoisseurs of dread. They did not live this long to die before their time and in a random way, struck down by a mysterious viral enemy they cannot see. Much older now than in their heyday years, they are again playing roulette with an invisible enemy. Here's the point. As young people, for this generation, as young people, old people menaced them. As young people, old people tried to kill them. As old people, young people are doing the same. Their parents voted in presidents who sent them and their friends to Southeast Asia. Their kids have children who are asymptomatic balls of kryptonite. Most Americans, speaking very generally, don't have serious complaints relative to those broadly weighing on most of the world. There are exceptions, of course, lives of suffering and tragedy. We know all about that. We have mostly all, however, won history's lottery to have landed here in America and to have largely been spared the desperate scramble for life's basic needs. That said, this cohort of our fellow citizens that is finishing its run this decade or next, the one that Scorsese studies in his Dylan documentaries, Scorsese's first was in 2005, titled No Direction Home, has had, if not a rough time of it, then at least a particularly trying one. By and large, they are not warriors. They are not a greatest generation, though there are some among it who are heroes, of course. They are most definitely, though, of a piece. The date stamps on our entrant ticket are a mix. 1956 was a good year to step onto the stage. 1941, not so much. If past is prologue, the Dylan Baez generation, that 1938 to 1953 group, they'll produce some lasting art and commentary about their age and this crisis. They've done so before because of fear, and perhaps fear will prod them to do it again. It's over on the front page of the Washington Post. I hope you will send it around to people. Hundreds of comments. I'm sure they all love it. Got nothing to do with Trump, but I'm sure all the never-Trump or anti-Trumper people are commenting because they're nutty. But send it around to people born 38, 39 to 53, and they'll nod their heads and say, yep, duck and cover. And now this. The old people tried to kill us back when we were young, and the young people are trying to kill us now that we're old. I'll be right back, America. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper today on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. My Washington Post column has got all the left upset again. Honest to goodness, I do believe there's a weird group of like 25,000 people who do nothing all day but comment on Washington Post columns. They don't have. You're supposed to just read them. I don't know why it's up to 600 comments. It astounds me. On Twitter, I'm also astonished. I tweeted out that Judge Sullivan, who was rebuked by the D.C. Circuit without saying so yesterday, he drew a good panel of judges. And these three judges, the writ of mandamus from General Flynn's lawyers, they said, hey, Judge Sullivan, you got 10 days to tell us what the hell you're doing. That's a paraphrase. Because it doesn't make a lick of sense to us, and we think it's as unconstitutional as the day is long. I'll talk with Dr. Arnn about that in hour 3. And I tweeted that out. The best thing for him to do is to dismiss the case against General Flynn today and then inform the D.C. Circuit that their order is moot, or he will embarrass himself. He's already embarrassed himself. It's a constitutional outrage, and everybody knows it. Even the hard left knows it. It is judges do not prosecute. They don't. They never have. They never should. They can't become the Star Chamber. It is a constitutional outrage. Judge Sullivan has lost his blinking mind. He's got Trump derangement syndrome. And the D.C. Circuit basically signaled to him, Judge Sullivan, you can get rid of this yourself, or we're going to slap you down. So we will see. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was on the White House lawn yesterday, joking with reporters, among them Zeke Miller, a buddy of mine I've traveled with. Cut number 5.
I'm thinking about going. That'll be next week to the rocket launch. I hope you're all going to join me. I'd like to put you on the rocket and get rid of you for a while. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve.
I love that. That is why, if he wins re-election, I think he will. It will be because the American people enjoy a joke, even though the Beltway Manhattan media elite throw up their wringing hands and wonder about, threatening violence against reporters. It's just a joke. He also talked about his hydroxychloroquine regime. Cut number 6.
I think it's another day. I had a 2-week regimen of hydroxychloroquine, and I've taken it, I think, just about 2 weeks. I think it's another day. And I'm still here. I'm still here, and I tested very positively in another sense. So this morning, I tested positively toward negative, right? So no, I tested perfectly this morning.
Meaning, Trump's having fun. I tested positively towards negative. Poor Joe Biden. I think Trump's going to win because Joe Biden is falling apart. Doesn't make a lot of sense. In fact, here he is talking about whether he'll cooperate with a Senate subpoena if it comes. Cut number 9. Joe Biden, cut number
Wisconsin's
9.
Republican Senator Ron Johnson has spearheaded a number of investigations targeting you and your family. Homeland Security voted today on subpoenas. He's requesting more documents be unsealed regarding Michael Flynn. Will you comply with any of his inquiries if he asks of you between now and November?
Well, look, first of all, he didn't get any subpoena to subpoena me or my son or any family member, number one. Number two, this is a great diversion.
It didn't make any sense. We should just cut off the part that Biden doesn't make any sense. But we're used to that by now. President Trump also made a point about churches as he was going out the door. And this is something I covered with David Cortman of the Alliance Defending Freedom yesterday at the end of the show. If you didn't hear it, you should go back and listen to it. I hope you were watching on YouTube, by the way. Cut number 7.
I want to get our country back to normal. I want to normalize. One of the other things I want to do is get the churches open. The churches are not being treated with respect by a lot of the Democrat governors. I want to get our churches open, and we're going to take a very...
They seem to have a tick about it. You know what you can do to help churches? You can help kids by getting them an age-appropriate Bible. If you go to Angel Tree Fellowship banner, the Prison Fellowship banner for Angel Tree, they serve the 28 million American children. 1 out of 28 children have a mom or dad in jail. Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree Ministry serves them this summer with a box of blessings that includes that age-appropriate Bible, $150 worth of good food coupons, sports equipment, just a touch of love in the middle of a hot summer where the camps aren't open. If they're open, we'll send them to camp. Please be generous for Angel Tree at hughhewitt.com. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Sonny Bunch is the head of rebellermedia.com. He also has an important announcement. It's not about Grant. By the way, Sonny, the reason I tweeted that is the United States Senator ordered me to do it, and so I got a subpoena, and I was told to issue you an edict to review Grant. So it wasn't me.
Which senator is commanding me to do this?
All right, I will admit it, Senator Cotton. He's been watching Grant with the Fetching Mrs. Cotton, and he wants you to review Grant.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
You know, because he can actually have people swoop down and I think disappear you. I think that's what the left. That's MSNBC says he can do that. So I think it must be true. What is your big announcement? I want the audience to hear this.
I don't have a big announcement. What's my big announcement?
You begin HughHewitt.com Universe podcast soon.
Hopefully, we're still waiting on getting a contract from the Salem folks.
They told me it was done.
I have not seen anything. I'll check with my people.
Oh, your people should check with my people because my people said your people said yes.
Okay. Well,
okay.
I have to again. I have not seen a contract. I've been in all these emails. So once we get the paperwork settled here, you know.
No, doggone. Roll the tape backwards. We'll do it next week.
Right.
What are we talking about this week? It's a long weekend. We need to watch something, and if you're not ready to talk about Grant, you'd better have something up your sleeve.
We got some stuff here. So there's a new show on Netflix. It's not quite new. It came out a couple weeks ago, but I've been catching up. Called Trial by Media. Have you seen this? I
have not. I'm trapped in Belgravia by the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt, and I can't get out.
So Trial by Media is a series. It's a 6-episode documentary series about big media stories that were also big legal stories, essentially, and the ways in which the media has kind of influenced and corrupted the legal process. The first episode is really fantastic. It's about the Jenny Jones murder. Do you remember this, Hugh?
Not in the least.
The person who was surprised on the Jenny Jones show with a confession of love by a man. He was surprised by a gay friend saying, "I love you. You know, will you be with me?" And then 2 days later, he went to the guy's house and he shot him.
Homophobic rage.
Was surprised.
Yeah, homophobic rage.
So anyway, the show is all about the ways in which the sensational nature of talk shows of this sort, the post-Oprah, Jerry Springer, Jenny Jones, Montel Williams style, let's surprise people with terrible news, or let's find out who the baby mama daddy is, all that stuff, kind of set the stage for the awfulness of court TV and trials on TV, which of course then leads to its own.
Well, didn't Judge Wapner come first, actually?
Do you think? I mean, I don't think the People's Court is the same sort of thing, right? I mean, the People's Court is basically
that's a joke.
Mediation. Well, okay. Well, no, but I mean, I do think that there's something to be said for the TV-ification of the court system, right? I mean, this is a real
problem. That's true. It is. It doesn't work at all like that. It's got nothing to do with anything you see on TV, period.
Right. And I think people like the kind of pat, easy answers of the People's Court or Judge Judy, which, again, are, as you say, those aren't really courtroom settings. Those are essentially gussied up mediation. Right. The people who go on agree like beforehand that this is essentially it is legally a mediation. It's not a trial. It's, it's just made to look like one.
Well, I hope you're prepared to go back to Ironsides and Perry Mason. If we're going to put the fruit of the poisonous tree here, if we're going to come up to Jenny Jones, it all starts with Ironside and Perry Mason, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, the show is interesting, and I would be kind of curious as a legal mind, Hugh. What you think of the kind of world in which we live now, with trials on TV and trials, fought by the lawyers on whatever the equivalent today of Larry King Live is.
My partners are laughing, though I have retired from. I'm an administrative lawyer. I've been in court 4 times in my life, one of which was the Ninth Circuit trial, 3 times in a district court. I deal administrative law in front of administrative tribunals, so I actually have no idea about. I didn't even know which side of the courtroom to stand on when I showed up in a pro bono case. I had to ask the prosecutor which side of the trial they pointed me.
Fair.
That's terrible, right?
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's an interesting show. I think listeners would enjoy it. Checking it out. I don't think it's quite rough enough on the traditional media and the role they play in turning this into a circus.
Who else besides Jenny Jones? OJ in there?
No. So OJ is not handled here. There's the Bernie Getz case. The Amadou Diallo case, Blago gets a whole episode at the end of the season, and there's a particularly tough one, the Big Dan's case. Do you remember the Big Dan's case it's essentially the case that the movie The Accused is based on, the Jodie Foster.
I don't know The Accused, and I don't know the Big Dance.
Yeah,
this is like I think lawyers may not like these. I've always said The Verdict is the worst Paul Newman show ever movie because it's a trial about which nothing is right. So maybe this isn't for lawyers. Have you got anything else for me? Because I'm not going to watch Trial by Media.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
That's up.
There's also, and I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet because it dropped this morning on Netflix. I did not get a press screening, but it's getting pretty bad reviews, so maybe skip it. But The Lovebirds. The Lovebirds is The Lovebirds is the movie from Kumail Nanjiani, and it is a movie that was supposed to come out at right as everything was locking down. He and his girlfriend are out for a night on the town. Somebody carjacks them and runs down a bicyclist.
Oh, I like the trailer. The trailer was funny.
The trailer played in front of movies for like 6 straight months.
Yes.
And then it was supposed to come out right as everything was locking down. And, of course, it did not. It got sold to Netflix, and it is coming out today.
I'll watch that. I'll watch that.
Have been not kind.
I don't care. It's a funny movie. There's a funny trailer. I'll watch it. That's the whole movie, probably.
You know what? Here's the thing. Let me just throw this out there. It'll be nice to have like an actual movie.
Yes.
Be able to watch an actual, theatrical quality, even if it's not quite in.
Sonny, a technical question: are the theaters smart enough to put trailers in front of these movies? Because that's what they should be doing.
Trailers in front of the Netflix releases?
Yeah.
No. Well, there's no trailers in front of the Netflix.
If you want to reproduce the theater experience, you should have "Let's Go Out to the Lobby for Popcorn" thing, and you should have trailers.
I guess that makes. I can see that. I can see how that would make some sense. But the whole point of the Netflix experience, right, is you're just into it. You go to it. You start watching.
But they're wrong. Maybe they could give you an option: the theater option and the comfy sofa option.
Yeah. Well, that's something to think about. Netflix, they all they're trying to do is capture eyeballs. So maybe
they want to make more. But people like trailers. I used to do an hour on the show every week about trailers.
Speaking of trailers, did you see the new Tenet trailer?
No.
The new Christopher Nolan.
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Nolan.
Yes.
It's very exciting. It's got people doing things backwards.
And they walk past bullets in the window and things are healed up. Yeah, it's weird.
International intrigue and timeline shenanigans. It looks very Christopher Nolan. I'm very excited for it. And the thing I'm most excited for it is the title card near the end of the trailer, which says "Coming to theaters." That's what I'm excited for. Christopher Nolan.
Do you think we could have a trailer TV channel where we just watch trailers?
Well, that's YouTube. Basically,
yeah, but
YouTube.
You have to click around. I would just like to sit down and watch trailers.
You want to have trailers curated and brought to you.
Yeah, before there was Sonny Bunch, there was Emmett of the Unblinking Eye, and he always loved trailers with swords, and so we would talk about trailers with swords had their own category, but I digress. I divert. I distinct. What else have you got?
I don't know. That's it, Hugh. That's all I got for
you. You didn't watch Grant, all 18 hours of Grant overnight?
Well, you can't just tweet demands to review long TV shows 10 hours before the segment. That's the
Hey,
thing that doesn't work.
if Tom Cotton or Christopher Wray or Donald Trump sends me a note, they want, it's sort of like, what if Erdogan sends me a note that he wants you to review something? Should I put that out there? What about Putin? What about Xi?
Well, I fear Erdogan probably more than Tom Cotton. So make sure to pass those along.
All right,
I think he could send a team into the States. I don't know. That's a scary one.
You know what? We're joking, but it's true. He's kind of the ruthless thug that would do something stupid on American soil. I don't think the other ones would. So let me go back. Let me review. To review, Sonny Bunch. Trial by media, thumbs up.
Media, good.
Lovebirds, thumbs down. And you have not watched Grant, and you are not yet into Belgravia.
No. One other option for, again, just a silly comedy that it's not high art, but I think a lot of people will like it. It's a movie called The Wrong Missy, also on Netflix. It is made by the Happy Madison folks, the Billy Madison crew, the Adam Sandler team of shenanigan makers. It stars David Spade as a guy who accidentally invites a terrible one-night stand to a corporate retreat and has to keep her away from all of his bosses and friends, and finds true love in the course of it. And it's fine. It's totally fine. But again, it's like a funny 90, 95 minute, however long it is, excuse to enjoy just basic silly comedy. So the wrong.
All right, now let me ask you about the guy who did Downton Abbey that Mark Stein liked. What's his name? Justin Peoples. But
I have no idea.
Well, he's done this Belgravia thing. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, you mentioned Belgravia last week.
Yeah, well, it's Downton Abbey in 1841, and I don't know why he hates us. Why does he hate men?
Why does he hate men? That's a great question, because that's all I can think if somebody's like, you should watch Downton Abbey, but it's in 1840.
That's it. Well, that's it. It's sort of like the old Merchant Ivory films, for which there was no excuse whatsoever ever to make. And I can't remember. Mark Stein loved this guy. Mark Stein thought he was a genius. That's when Mark would get up and do the show when it was in the afternoon. Mark sleeps in. He doesn't do the show unless at this hour. Okay, Sonny Bunch, follow you at Twitter, Rebeller Media. Is it still a free trial offer?
Yeah, if you go to the homepage, check the left top corner of the site. There's 2 free months there for you.
There you go, Rebeller Media. Thank you, Sonny Bunch. He's going to watch Grant this week, relieffactor.com. There it is. I got to go out after the show. It's raining in the Beltway. I don't know that I will, but I will take my son, my relieffactor.com right now with my lukewarm coffee. And I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Now, I've already got 21 miles in this week. I took yesterday off because we had a long day of pre-taping and organizing and that sort of stuff. So I took yesterday off. It's raining like cats and dogs. I hate to walk in the rain. I should. I mean, if I was British, I would. I don't think the British even notice rain. But I'm not. I'm an American. And I'll walk in the snow. And I'll walk in the sun and I'll run in the rain in the sun. But I don't know. But I got my relieffactor.com no matter what comes. Tarzana Joe is next. Defense Secretary Mark Esper, Senator Rick Scott, Dr. Larry Arnn. They're all ahead here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Joined now by the poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show, Tarzana Joe. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Hugh. May I have a serious word before my frivolous poem?
Absolutely.
Thank you. You know, every year when Tarzana Joey was a scout, we participated in the flag placement ceremony at the Los Angeles National Cemetery on Wilshire Boulevard. I even wrote some poems about it. This year, because of COVID, no flag placement. No scout is going to put a flag in front of all 85,000 headstones at the cemetery for the first time in, well, since there was a cemetery, perhaps. So I'm asking folks, the cemetery is open. Visit, pay your respects, bring a flag, and have your own ceremony with a veteran.
Well said, Joe. Well reminded.
Thank you. And now for the poem. Every time I'm fearful of how what I do might look, I write myself an email saying, do it by the book. My work's too vast to waste my time with conscience or reflections. I'm glad, therefore, I have a text with step-by-step directions. And when I'm asked to bend the rules in ways too hard to swallow, I use the book to call to mind the rules that I must follow. I put it all out in the light to show the way I'm going, honest, candid, and upfront, in case my rear is showing. The book I use in my career was written by Percy Shelley. The book they use in Washington was penned by Machiavelli. Its pages give out great advice to deal with multitasking, which helps you when you're juggling both leaking and unmasking, or how to keep the brass informed of all the leads you're pursuing so they can plausibly deny everything you're doing. These attitudes exemplify our time's disturbing trends, employment of deceitful means to reach ignoble ends. The Founding Fathers wrote the book on freedom's care and feeding. They have no hand in publishing the books that we've been reading. My thoughts on this are incomplete. This poem is just a demo. Now that I'm done, I think I'll go and write myself a memo. That's by the book by Tarzana Joe.
Memorable for its fine quality, Joe, but also for Machiavelli and Freeding. I'm going to put that down.
A little poor diction there. I'm sorry.
But it was still a fine effort. Will it be at tarzanajoe.com?
But of course.
Of course. And I'm glad. Thank you for reminding everyone about Memorial Day. Come Monday, we will be spending the entire show on Memorial Day with our friends from the Semper Fi and America's Fun. Do not miss that show. And Joe, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
tarzanajoe.com. Let me remind you as well, Angel Tree is still on our minds as we head into the weekend. I want to share one statistic with you. There are 3 million children in America with one parent doing time in prison. 3 million. And kids of prisoners often feel like they're doing their own time for their loved ones' mistakes, though through no fault of their own. The ministry that targets these children specifically is Angel Tree. It is a division of Prison Fellowship, which takes care of mom and dad inside of prison, tries to get them ready for coming out. And in the interim, the kids are taken care of as much as possible by Angel Tree. This summer, they will send boxes of blessings, care packages to children of prisoners in all 50 states. And the more we donate, the more we raise, the more we'll send. Every box will include $150 of grocery gift cards for nutritious, good food, a new Zondervan Bible to feed their soul, plus sports equipment, a note of encouragement to know they are not forgotten. Just go to HughHewitt.com and join the other listeners who have already tried to help kids stay away from drugs, away from gangs, away from the dark side, and on the right path as they wait for mom and dad to come home. Also want to remind you, givingmass.com is over there. But remember to attach my name, givingmass.com/Hugh. It's like using the name Hugh at Honorbound Coffee or using the name Hugh at mypillow.com. When you use the name Hugh, givingmass.com/Hugh, not only do you get the best price for the masks you're going to need for many, many weeks and months, it's just going to happen. You're going to have to wear masks in restaurants and in supermarkets. And if you don't want to, you're not going to go shopping or people aren't going to let you into their store. It's their store. They're not going to let you in. But if you want to go into some stores that are mask requirement, and I think you should be wearing a mask, there are definite benefits to it to the people coming towards you and near you. Doesn't help you. If somebody sneezes on you, it's not going to stop your eyes and other access points into your body of the virus. But if you wear a mask, you cut down on the number of droplets you expel into the. It's that simple. Just be responsible. Go to givingmask.com/Hugh. Every time you order from them, they give a high-end mask. It's absolutely free to one of the hospitals we pick. and those hospitals accept. I want to play Chuck Schumer. This tells you a lot. He's on with Meghan McCain yesterday on The View. Cut number 11.
So, Senator, President Trump has been nonstop tweeting about Obamagate, which stems from allegations Obama and senior officials used government power to spy on Trump's campaign. Can you say with 100% certainty that this did not happen and it's all a big Trump conspiracy theory to distract us?
Well, I didn't say it. 17 intelligence agencies. These are nonpartisan. These are people who've risked their lives for us, CIA, NSA. They said it. This came from the Russians who wanted to divert attention from what they did. And for the Senate and President Trump to spend time on this when we have a COVID crisis is just absolutely absurd. We should be focusing on helping people through this crisis, not pursuing already discredited conspiracy theories.
Which is why Judge Sullivan's going to get slapped down by the D.C. Circuit. I wish Meghan, who's a pretty good interviewer, Meghan McCain, had said, the D.C. Circuit, maybe they taped it beforehand. D.C. Circuit's issued an order to Judge Sullivan to show cause why he ought not to be laughed out of court. That's just a loose translation of what the order is. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, Senator Rick Scott, they're coming up on the next hour of the Friday Memorial Day weekend edition of The Hugh Hewitt Show. Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's Hugh Hewitt. Memorial Day weekend is ahead of us. Do not forget on Monday, Semper Fi and America's Fund show, my annual Memorial Day show, honoring those wounded warriors who are out there and recovering and living their lives after 20 years of war. The Semper Fi Fund and America's Fund never lets them down. And thanks to the people in this audience who go to semperfifund.org and contribute, who are old fundraisers, or running the Marine Corps Marathon as part of Team Semper Fi. They keep moving forward. They've raised $220 million. They have the lowest expense overhead in the business. They have the highest charity rating. They are, with one other military charity, the highest ranked, most transparent, most efficient, and their new chairman is none other than former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Joe Dunford. So honored to talk to these men and women, the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, Coast Guardmen wounded in the war over the last 20 years. On Monday, don't miss that show. Big headline of the morning. China announces a new national security law for Hong Kong. From the Wall Street Journal account, China signaled it will impose new national security laws on Hong Kong, dealing a blow to the territory's autonomy as Beijing seeks to stamp out widespread pro-democracy protests that have challenged leader Xi Jinping. The British Telegraph, China's regime pledges to clamp down on dissent in Hong Kong. China wants to pass laws that can prevent and punish subversion. Jimmy Lai, who's been on this show, is in big trouble. It begins a proposal to enact new Hong Kong security legislation was submitted to China's rubber stamp parliament on Friday, a move expected to fan fresh protest in the semi-autonomous city. Not semi-autonomous anymore. Jackboots are coming. Hong Kong stocks dive on China's plan for security law. The Wall Street Journal opined China moves on Hong Kong. Beijing plans a new national security law. Is Taiwan next? Maybe I'll have time to talk to Secretary of Defense Mark Esper about this. He's coming up later in the hour, as is Senator Rick Scott. Let's hear, though, China is going to be a key. We will be in the middle of economic recovery by the time we start voting in October, and we have our big election on November 2nd. The V-shaped recovery will be underway. It's already starting. And markets show that everywhere except Hong Kong, which went down 5.5% overnight. By the way, if you're going to buy a house right now. If you're going to refinance a house, go to andrewandtodd.com right now. They have never been this low. And this will be, this recovery is going to kick into gear, and the inflationary effect of spending trillions of dollars, and one more relief bill is coming with some aid for the states and some liability preemption. It won't be the kind of nonsense Nancy Pelosi, the cash for cannabis nonsense that came out. But we'd better have some defense spending in there, because we have a full-on Cold War with China, though people won't say it out loud except here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Tom Cotton has defined the issue already very clearly yesterday on Fox and Friends. He talked about Joe Biden's policy on the People's Republic of China, and he did so succinctly. Cut number one, Senator Cotton on Fox and Friends yesterday.
Yeah, Brian, I don't think it'd be any surprise if Beijing wanted Joe Biden to win the election. Joe Biden has a terrible 30-year record on China, whether it's voting to give them normal trade relations or admitting them to the WTO or celebrating their rise, even last year saying they weren't our competitors. The president recognizes that we have a complicated economic relationship with China. We shouldn't be in a position where we are today, where they have some leverage over Americans, for instance, because they produce so many of our drugs and medical equipment. But in a gradual, step-by-step fashion, we need to begin to change that relationship and turn the tables on China.
Yes, but the question is, if the big picture is now the time for the world economy to see a split between the two biggest economies.
There's already a lot of momentum there, Brian. Whether you look at countries like Japan or Australia, who are beginning to try to bring back more manufacturing or standing up to Chinese disinformation, we ought to support our allies. We ought to do everything we can to limit sole or limited sourcing products inside of China, so we never have this kind of position again where China has us over a barrel. And we ought to continue to try to find ways to work with the civilized democratic world as opposed to communist China, not just on security and political and diplomatic matters, but economic trade as well.
Senator, also, I think you know that this whole thing started in Wuhan, and you know that many people call this the Wuhan virus or the Chinese virus. Kamala Harris has had enough. She has a resolution that's going to work its way through the Senate to ban the phrase Wuhan virus, and she calls it anti-Asian. Your feeling on this?
Well, I objected to that resolution, Brian. First off, Wuhan is just a city. It's not even a people. I guess she's going to have to call out Lyme disease for being anti-Connecticut, or maybe Legionnaire's disease for being anti-veteran Zika, since Zika is a forest in Africa. But this political correctness run amok covers a more serious point. The Democrats want to wave their arms and say that this is racist or xenophobic, and that's because they don't have an answer for China's rise and the threat that China poses to us. Joe Biden, as we said, has been weak on China for 30 years, so they want to have politically correct distractions to distract people from his terrible record on China. We can't let that happen.
He's absolutely right. Senator Cotton, who's kind of a slow runner, but he's a very fast thinker. I passed Senator Cotton the other day on the George Washington Parkway bike running path, and I was running. I do it like a 12-minute mile. I honestly, maybe he's hurt, but in any event, very quick-minded. And Senator Cotton was out there a long time ago on China. He was first to the bell on the virus. He is first to the bell on Joe Biden not being the guy you want to stand up to the People's Republic of China. Now, there are some in America who will not want Cold War 2.0. Very serious here. I have a Washington Post column today on Generation Fear. People born between 1939 and 1953 are really Generation Fear. Part of them are boomers and some of them are pre-war, but they're Generation Fear. They've just grown up their whole life afraid of things. Afraid of being drafted. Now they're afraid of getting killed by the virus. They were afraid of duck and cover. It passed. By the time I'm born in 1956, and people, the late boomers, we're not that Generation Fear. We're kind of Generation relaxed. We've been pretty relaxed about everything. Generation Optimist. Every year got better. Every year got better. More freedom. A better standard of living for your parents. They got more relaxed as they came out of World War II. If you had a dad as a veteran, or some mom's veteran too. But not Generation Fear. Generation Fear is just afraid of everything. And they might vote for Joe Biden because they just would rather go gently into the night. Because Joe Biden is a vote for American decline. It just is. It's a vote for socialism, AOC and the squad. It's a vote for American decline. It's also a vote for cover-up. I keep going back to Judge Starr because he keeps saying great things. He was on Fox News yesterday talking about the Susan Rice memo, which is infamous. The left doesn't want to talk about this case. Judge Sullivan did us all a favor by abusing his power and torturing General Flynn a little bit more because everyone kind of caught on. And the D.C. Circuit's going to slap him down hard. But Ken Starr went on Fox News with Sandra Smith yesterday to talk about Susan Rice's cover your you-know-what email, cut number 3.
These are very troubling revelations. The meeting in the White House, now somewhat infamous because of the now infamous Susan Rice email. Why did she write that email on Inauguration Day? To essentially cover the President Obama's tracks. Let's go by the book. I mean, you can just see lawyers guiding the formation of that email written 2 weeks later to essentially say Jim Comey was expressing these concerns about General Flynn. But by the way, this is another aspect, I think, of where things went very badly awry. And Jim Comey is largely to blame, not exclusively to blame, because Jim Comey refused to do what a responsible director of the FBI would do, which is to be honest, to be transparent. If, it's a big if, he had concerns about General Flynn, if he did, they were unfounded. He should have shared those with the incoming administration, but he didn't. He arrogated power to himself. And so this was just part of this larger mosaic. They were trying to understand, why did the transition not occur from President Obama to President Trump in a smooth way? Why, indeed, were there investigations going on of the Trump transition? There are so many questions to be answered. And so let's get to the answers.
Let's get to the election. I think we're going to want to choose free markets and growth, more deregulation, and vote for Donald Trump. I think we're going to want to choose a strong defense and more defense spending and vote for Donald Trump. I think we're going to want more Justices Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and the 220 plus other judges that he's nominated and the Senate has confirmed. And we're going to vote for Donald Trump. But mostly we're going to need reality versus the People's Republic of China. And Joe Biden, as Robert Gates, who served both President Obama and President Bush, famously said Joe Biden hadn't been right about a major national security foreign policy issue in 40 years. Not once. Hasn't been right. I cannot believe we're going to vote for American decline. I just don't believe it. I do not believe it. I know AOC believes in American decline. I know the Squad wants American decline. They want socialism. I do not believe this country will vote for American decline. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree Summer Camps. Click on the banner at hughhewitt.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I got MSNBC on in the background, and I see there's, well, never mind. There's nothing going on. Nothing going on. I will just simply tell you that coming up after the break, Rick Scott is coming up, Florida Senator, and then Secretary of Defense Mark Esper will be here. The news happens here. Givingmasks.com/Hugh. That's where you go to get the mask you're going to need for the next 2 months as we open up. Some stores are not going to let you in. Good on them. I don't want you in there unless you're wearing a mask in a supermarket. Givingmask.com/Hugh, though. When you buy your mask from givingmask.com/Hugh, they'll send a high-end mask for every order to a children's hospital of my choice, and they need them. They're taking masks. It's free, and they're just an endless need. Visitors, nurses, patients, they got to be the high-end type. They got to be the high-end type, and they're expensive. You don't need the high-end type to go to the supermarket. Save it for traveling on an airplane. But you need a surgical mask just to stop you from infecting others. Also want to remind you at HughHewitt.com, 3 million American children. It's just an astonishing number, 3 million. It's only 1% of America, but it's 3 million kids have mom or dad in jail. Angel Tree Fellowship, Prison Fellowship, takes care of these kids year-round, but in the summer they make a special effort. Normally we send them to camp, but a lot of the camps can't open. So a few of them are, but most of them aren't. But we still need help. They still need a touch. They still need the volunteers. They still need the Christian-based fellowship that comes from people who love on them, give them a box of blessings this summer. They knock on the door and they got, hey, look here in this box. Hoops, soccer ball, football, whatever their choice of sport. $150 worth of good food. Their caregiver, the other parent, grandma, grandpa, will be able to go to the store and actually get great food, not high-calorie, bad food, which is bad for health. No, that's what we do. Note of encouragement. You help, and we need you. You are responsible for a child whose name you will never know until the next life. But you will know it. And that which you do for the least of these, you do unto me. You can do that at Angel Tree Banner at HughHewitt.com. Let me read you the Wall Street Journal editorial that will set up the next two segments. I have Secretary Mark Esper of DOD coming up. I have United States Senator Rick Scott coming up. Editorial, China moves on Hong Kong. Ted Hui, a pro-democracy lawmaker. That's the picture. Start over. China's forceful takeover of Hong Kong appears to have begun, and threats against Taiwan are rising. That's the message this week as the National People's Congress in Beijing moved to pass an onerous new security law for Hong Kong, and the Chinese Navy plans to practice an amphibious assault on an island controlled by Taiwan. Under the Sino-British Joint Declaration, China promised Hong Kong legal autonomy and the preservation of basic liberties, including freedom of speech, press, and assembly. Yet Beijing is now seeking to bypass the Hong Kong Legislative Council and impose the national security law unilaterally. This rule by diktat means that the end of one country, two systems arrangement that Beijing promised for 50 years after 1997. Enforcement of the national security legislation would erase the legal lines between Hong Kong and the mainland. By our deadline, China's Communist Party legislature hadn't released a draft of the bill, but rest assured the purpose is to silence and punish dissent to prevent a repeat of last year's mass protest in Hong Kong. For months, Beijing has falsely accused protesters of seeking independence from the mainland and acting on behalf of a foreign black hand. On Monday, it goes on to talk about this. I want you also to understand, to underscore the point, Reuters quoted Chinese sources last week as saying the People's Liberation Army is planning a large-scale landing drill off of Hainan Island in the South China Sea in August to simulate the possible seizure of Taiwanese-held Province Island in the future. If Chinese President Xi Jinping needs a nationalist rallying cry, he might sign off on such an assault. The only way to deter any of this is to make sure that Beijing officials know they will pay a heavy price. Hong Kongers may feel no choice but to protest in the streets, even at the risk of arrest and imprisonment. They may lose, but they will expose Beijing's ugly side to the world. Like we didn't know, the U.S. will also have to sell more arms to help Taiwan defend itself. Xi wants the world to think that China is a benign power and follows global rules. But in Hong Kong and Taiwan, we are seeing the true nature of the current communist regime. The world will have to adapt to this increasing dangerous reality. Stay tuned. Senator Rick Scott is next, America. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, 33 minutes after the hour. I'm joined now by United States Senator Rick Scott of the great state of Florida. Good morning, Senator Scott. Good to have you back.
Good morning, Hugh. So we got to get this economy going.
We do. I'm going to put that in the second half of the interview, though. I want to talk about your work on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs up top and put a laser focus on General Flynn, Judge Sullivan, and the D.C. Circuit. Yesterday, the D.C. Circuit issued an order to the judge to show cause within 10 days to respond to the General Flynn's defense counsel petition for a writ of mandamus. I don't think the judge has an answer. I think General Flynn should have the prosecution against him dismissed as the Department of Justice moved. What do you think, Senator Scott?
I completely agree with you. I mean, this is a shameful time for our country. If you look at what the Obama administration did, is they weaponized federal agencies. Whether go back to the IRS going after the conservative groups, and you look at what they did to Flynn, Carter Page, these things. It's disgusting. We've got to get to the bottom of it. We've got to find out exactly what they were doing. But in the case of Flynn, this needs to be dismissed. There's no basis for it. So the judge has got to get rid of this. You know, on Homeland Security, we're doing a subpoena to try to find out exactly what happened with the Bidens, and why was the Vice President of the United States focused on getting a prosecutor fired that was prosecuting a company that his son was getting paid $83,000 a month from. We got to get this is our government. It's not some elite group in DC's government. People have got to have faith in their government. And when you see things like this, you can't have faith in your government.
Now, Andrew Weissman, right? He was one of the senior lawyers on Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team, correct?
Yep.
And he's a very competent, if dogged investigator, prosecutor. He's got a reputation for being merciless, actually. Did he ever appear in front of your committee?
No, he's not. He's not appeared in front of the committee. We're just now going to get. Hopefully, Ron Johnson, the chair of the committee, he really believes we're going to get information hopefully quickly. We'll find out. I hope we do, and we can get this behind us. We put it out and let everybody know what the Bidens were doing.
Now, Mr. Weissman is headlining a fundraiser for Joe Biden. Is that appropriate?
I think you got to be. No, of course not. You got to be. You've got to be. If you're a prosecutor, you've got to be so careful about being. You can't appear to be biased. And when you appear to be biased, you lose all your credibility. So, judges are expected to be, not biased. I appointed 408 judges as governor. I actually never asked them that position on anything other than, you understand that you are simply the judiciary. You're not the legislative branch or the executive branch. And if they didn't understand that, I wouldn't appoint them. But the same with prosecutors. They got to understand they have got to be unbiased.
Does his appearance at a Biden fundraiser undermine the credibility of the Mueller investigation?
Absolutely. You've got to be so careful. Even in my job, you've got to be. First off, I represent. I have campaigns. We have heated campaigns. When you get elected, I represent everybody in my state. Everybody. I don't just represent one party or a certain group of people. I represent everybody. And so but as a prosecutor and as a judge, you have to become, everything you do, you got to say to yourself, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that no one believes that I was ever biased in the things that I'm doing.
Couple more questions on Homeland Security. FBI Director Christopher Wray, who is I don't know him, but I know many former judges and lawyers, distinguished members of the bar who have nothing but the highest esteem for his integrity and ability, is coming under some criticism from the center-right for his failure to clean up the 7th floor as quickly as they would like. What is your assessment of Director Wray? I think he's doing the best job he can do under these circumstances, given federal law and personnel policies. But what do you think, Senator Scott?
I have a very good working relationship with him. I was very focused on the FBI doing their job after the Parkland shooting because, they had prior knowledge of that. They had prior knowledge of the shooting in the Pulse shooting in Orlando. And I'll tell you what, Christopher Wray, I think he cleaned it up. I went out and met with the people that run the call center. They're impressive. After as soon as they found information on the NAS shooter, he called me about it to make sure I understood exactly what they were doing. My experience has been with him that he is trying to run the FBI in a manner that we can be proud of the FBI again.
I believe that is correct, and I believe that a lot of folks should listen to you on that. Now, I want to talk to you about Christopher Wray was a judge litig clerk. He's a litigator, as they call them. Judge Litig, probably the most respected former federal judge in America, along with Mike McConnell of Stanford Law School. Judge Litig co-authored a piece in the Wall Street Journal yesterday on temporarily barring any lawsuits based on COVID, temporary immunity for every business, school, not-for-profit, everybody in America, in order to keep the plaintiff's bar away from the recovery, stopping the recovery. Do you agree with Judge Litig? Do we need absolute immunity for a temporary period of time from anyone for anything related to COVID?
Absolutely. Think about it right now. Our schools we're still all learning about the coronavirus. I mean, and everything you read is mutating. So everybody's trying to figure out how to, take care of their employees, how to take care of their students, all these things. And so why would we sit here and say, oh, we don't want you to open, it's okay if you get sued a lot. I mean, we want this place to open, people get back to work. I grew up in a poor family. My parents didn't have jobs. I want these people back to work. I mean, people want to work, but if the trial bar sits there and they can sue for any little mistake you made because somebody got sick, oh, come on, we're going to kill our economy.
The op-ed is titled "Lawsuits Needn't Block Recovery. Congress has the power to limit coronavirus liability while regulators develop rules to control contagion." It's authored by J. Michael Luttig and David Rivkin Jr. I want to give Mr. Rivkin his due. And it closes by saying Congress just simply must put this into anything that comes forward as phase 4. Do you think it is an absolute must-have, Senator Scott?
I think it's a must-have. Here's what I want to do. We've got to get liability protection for our businesses and our first responders. Number 2 is we got to continue to help the people that have lost their jobs. And number 3, the small businesses that don't have the same access to capital, we've got to continue to find ways to help them either reopen or stay open. So that's my priority, those things. And that's what I'm going to work on to make sure happens. Whatever else we do, those are 3 things we have to do.
Has the Small Business Administration been changing the rules on PPP? I have heard from some small business owners that they applied for the loans. They hired temporary workers to fill the numbers that they were supposed to have so that no one got fired. Now the Small Business Administration is saying, no, you owe the loan. It's a nightmare. Isn't the whole deal supposed to be to keep small businesses going, come thick or thin?
The whole deal was to help keep our economy going and help our small businesses so they can reopen. Clearly, there's some abuses that have been taken. People have taken advantage of the system. Planned Parenthood was never anticipated they would get funding. Big public companies were never supposed to get this type of funding, things like that. So we've got to, I think the SBA and Treasury are trying to make sure that it's going to the right people. Our banks should have done first come, first serve. They didn't. But we've got to every day. My belief is whatever you do every day, get better at it. So I think the SBA and I think Treasury is trying to fix some of the things that probably could have been in the bill, but it was done so quickly that it was not able to get in there.
I think they have to count temporary employees, people hired as a temporary employee from a temp firm as the qualifying employee. I think they have to do that, but that's my 2 cents to you. Let me turn briefly to some political news and then to Governor Cuomo. Political news in Politico, Florida Playbook, it says that Rick Scott, Matt Gaetz, Ron DeSantis, and Marco Rubio are Florida's Gang of Four and that you're all eyeing White House bids in 2024. Are you eyeing a White House bid in 2024, Senator Scott?
No. What I'm trying to do is I just became a U.S. Senator. I mean, I'm spending my time trying to be the best U.S. Senator I can be, the best U.S. Senator in the United States. That's my focus.
Were you sympathetic to Ron DeSantis unloading on the White House press corps yesterday as driven by a, quote, narrative, close quote, that is indifferent to actual facts?
It gets frustrating sometimes with the press. They sure appear to be. If you're a Democrat, boy, they're all in to help you. And if you're a Republican, they're not. So, but, what I did as governor is every day I just went out and I worked hard and I put out the facts every day. And over time, people get it. I mean, I talked to so many people while I was governor. People understood that the media sometimes was biased. So I worked at it every day. I'm disappointed the media is biased in some of the things they put out, but that's reality.
President General Secretary Xi appears to about to lead his country towards a suppression of Hong Kong, which we never saw coming. The Hong Kong index is down 5.5–6% today. What should be the United States reaction if they, in fact, impose a national security law on Hong Kong?
Well, clearly we've got to continue to sanction. We have to understand. First off, let's all live in reality. It's Communist China, run by the Communist Party. She is the General Secretary of the Communist Party. They are in for world domination. They take our jobs. They take our technology. They put people in prison for their religion. They've caused so many people to die, lose their job because of this pandemic. They're taking away the rights given to them by when it was turned over in Hong Kong. Those citizens have rights that were given to them, and she's taken them away. So let's remember, do not buy one product from Communist China. None. Zero. None. Buy American products. We help American workers, but we've got to hold China accountable. But the biggest thing we're going to do, I've got bills. We're going to vet Chinese students before they come in here so they don't steal our technology, steal our vaccine, things like that. We're going to make sure we create, the protective gear made in this country. But the biggest thing we can do, stop buying anything made in Communist China.
Are we in Cold War II?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. Now they're clearly in it. They're in for world domination. We've been naive. So we've got to say to ourselves, how do we take care of ourselves? Understand you have an enemy. They're an adversary. It's called Communist China. They're not here to help us. Right? They intentionally didn't tell us about the coronavirus. It was intentional. It was not, there was nothing, we didn't do a good job. No, it was intentional what they did. You can see it was intentional. We've got to hold them accountable, the World Health Organization accountable. And so I've got a bill that says that from now on, the online resellers like Amazon, you will disclose. You should be doing it anyway. Tell us where things are made so we can buy American products. Walmart,
Last
Costco,
question, Senator Scott.
us.
Last question. Does Vice President Biden specifically and the Democratic Party generally understand the nature of the Chinese Communist Party and the threat that they pose to America?
No, he clearly doesn't. In his 8 years as vice president, name one thing that he did to hold Communist China accountable? Nothing. He did nothing to hold them accountable. So this election is going to say, are we going to understand that Communist China is our adversary and we're in a Cold War? Or are we going to go back to letting them take advantage of us?
Well said. Senator Scott, have a good Memorial Day. I look forward to seeing you on the other side of it. And sometime this summer, getting together. I always enjoy chatting with you. Be well and have a great Memorial Day. Thank you, Senator Scott.
Your family. Bye-bye.
Thank you. This is also time to Relief Factor. Look, it's raining like cats and dogs inside the Beltway. I can't honestly tell you I'm going for a 10-mile walk and run after the show. I can't. I'm always honest with you. But I took my Relief Factor in the first hour, and if it stops raining, I will. I'm listening to this amazing new book by Tom Holland, In the Shadow of the Sword. It's a history of Islam, and it's riveting. So I can actually lose a couple hours in my head out there. But ReliefFactor.com will power me forward. But I don't do it in the rain. I just don't do it. I'm a wimp. I'm 64. I'm a wimp. Go read my Washington Post column. It's over on the front page of Washington Post about Generation Fear, those born between 1938 and 1953. I'm not part of it. I'm Generation Relaxed. But forget the boomer designation. It's really Generation Fear and Generation Relaxed. And the Generation Relaxed use ReliefFactor.com because we amble a lot. Stay tuned. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper is next.
Okay, you were just waiting for him to join.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I want to remind you as we begin this Memorial Day weekend that come Monday, I'm having my annual Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund and America's Fund fundraiser. Every year for 15 years, we have set aside Memorial Day to honor the men and women who have been wounded in the war that began on 9/11 and continues to this day. And the Semper Fi Fund was begun around a kitchen table at Camp Pendleton by a few spouses of Marines who were deployed that said we have to do something for our returning injured warriors. And the Semper Fi Fund and America's Fund has continued to do that. Join me on Monday as I talk to these warriors. In their chain of command is Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. He joins me now. Mr. Secretary, it is great to have you on for the first time on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome and a happy Memorial Day weekend to you. And thank you for your service in uniform when you were a West Point graduate and today.
Well, thank you very much, Hugh. It's great to be on your show, and I appreciate you hosting me this morning on this very important and somber weekend.
Let me begin with what Senator Rick Scott just told me. I asked him, are we in Cold War 2.0? And the senator responded, absolutely, concerning China. There's no question about it. Do you agree, Secretary Esper, that Cold War 2.0 with China has begun?
There's certainly been a change in this country over the last few months after we've seen what China has done with regard to the coronavirus. I think it's the latest example of China once again not living up to its international obligations, saying one thing and doing another. You can go back through the litany of history of relationships between the United States and China for 40-plus years. And look, we see it today in Hong Kong. China once again reneging on the commitments it made to Hong Kong in 1997 during the handover. And this is just a trend that continues. And you may know that we have a national defense strategy that says we are now in an era of great power competition, and one of our biggest competitor is China. So my challenge is to implement that strategy and pivot toward China and make sure we deal with it and that we avoid a hot war with China. But at the same time, we stand up for our values, we stand up for the international rules-based order, and we stand up for those things that Americans hold dear.
Secretary Esper, I've been a big fan of your great power competition articulation. In China's state-run paper, the Global Times, this Wednesday, they cited experts as saying the Dongsha Islands, which are not really the Dongsha Islands, that's misnamed, but that's what they call them, are, quote, in a strategically important location, and that the People's Liberation Army has the capability of turning any exercise into action if Taiwan secessionists insist on secession. Many people think in August they may attempt a landing on these islands, the Pratas Islands. Would that be an act of war?
Look, we watch China very carefully. They should be cautious about what they do. We regard any type of military action like that very gravely. And I am confident that America will stand up for its allies and partners and, again, defend the international rules-based order. We got the greatest military in the world and certainly the greatest Navy history has known, and we will defend our allies and partners.
The Taiwan freely ruled island is our ally. Secretary of State Pompeo, first interview I did with him years ago, Secretary of State, said bluntly, we will live up to our treaty commitments to Taiwan. Do you agree with him, Secretary Esper?
Well, we will certainly live up to our commitments to Taiwan. We are also bound by the Taiwan Relations Act, which bound us through an act of Congress. So we will live up to the commitments we've made, both in written agreement and publicly. We've been very clear on that since our relationship with China began.
So I want to drill down on these exercises in August. If they're on Hainan Island, we have nothing to complain about. But if they come near the Pratas Islands, that violates Taiwan's sovereignty over those islands, does it not?
Well, I have to reacquaint myself with all the details of the geography and all that, and I'm not going to, get into hypotheticals. Let me, again, just say that we are going to defend our allies, our partners. We're going to defend our interests. We're going to defend the international rules-based order. I mean, we see this happening right now. You know, in the last couple of months, we've seen Chinese maritime activity pick up a little bit more. They sunk a vessel in the South China Sea. They continue to intimidate their neighbors, whether it's fishing rights or oil drilling rights in the South China Sea. This is, again, you see increased aggressive behavior by China. You see it in the military realm, the political realm, the diplomatic realm, and certainly the disinformation as well. And it's coming back. It's a backlash. There's a backlash against them now. And we need to take every opportunity we can to reassert what our values are and to reassure our partners and allies throughout the region and indeed throughout the world.
Now, the Defense News ran an op-ed about you this week by Bonnie Christian, which is titled "Esper's Dark Vision for U.S.-China Conflict Makes War More Likely." I think that's absurd. I think you have a realist vision of China, like Mike Pompeo, like President Trump. You don't have to be belligerent about it, but you've got a very realistic view about this. Are they engaged in an informational operation against the American people that is vast, comprehensive, and I'm afraid effective?
Well, first of all, of course I agree. I think I have a very, very realistic view of China as well. I've since I left joined the military out of the academy in 1986. I've been training for war, and you know that the more capable you are in war, the more likely you are to deter one, and that's what we're trying to do, is deter war with China. I was a military planner in the Pentagon while in uniform in 1995 and 1996, so I've seen this relationship with China evolve over time, and I think the stronger and more capable we are, the more likely we are to preserve the peace and to keep the relationship or get the relationship back on the right track. That's the important thing we need to do. And the way we do that, by the way, is by modernizing our military, by making sure we have highly qualified people, and we do. We're blessed to have the best and brightest our nation has to offer, and to develop advanced warfighting doctrines. All those things we are doing presently to make sure we can continue to deter, and if necessary, fight and win against China.
The new Secretary of the Navy was confirmed yesterday, thank goodness. I have been complaining, I'll put diplomatically, about the fact we don't have a plan for the 355-ship Navy that President Trump has promised repeatedly during the campaign and for 3 years. When will OSD let us see the plan? A real, actual nuts and bolts, this ship at this yard at this time to get us to 355, Secretary Esper?
Sure, we're working on that plan right now. I've been working closely between my internal think tank, if you will. The Navy obviously is working closely on this. We've brought in some outside experts. I want to make sure we have a future naval force that can meet the needs of deterring China, and again, failing that, fighting and winning. I think 355 ships is too few. I actually think we need a bigger Navy than that. I think its composition will look more different. It will be more and smaller type of surface combatants. And if you saw recently, Hugh, we just announced the purchase of a new surface combatant. I think we probably need more in terms of submarines. We need to move much more quickly on unmanned or lightly manned ships, and we certainly need a strategic deterrent. So, look, we have the best Navy in the world, and we're going to make it better. And I want to make sure we get that structure right, that future force idea. But it's got to have things like distributed lethality. It has to be survivable against a near-peer power such as China or Russia. And so it has to have certain attributes. So we need to be looking toward the future and make sure we build the fleet that we need going forward.
Mr. Secretary, what date will we see the plan by?
Oh, currently right now they're looking to back brief me, the team internally, in July or August, and then I want to make sure I share it with the Hill and do those types of things. But look, we have a plan right now. It's called our 5-year defense plan. So what we have planned is what's going to continue. The shipbuilding plan is a 30-year plan. It's beyond 5 years. It's of uncertain value. But what I do hope to portray is the objective force that we need by 2045 to deal with the Chinese. And by the way, it's not just surface combatants, but we need to start integrating into that plan things like sea lift and other enablers that are crucial to the maritime fight.
I just think it's going to be an issue in the campaign that President Trump promised 355, and we haven't got a plan. But let me move on in our short time left.
Well, again, I think 355 is too few. I think we need more than 355.
I'll take that with a plan, Mr. Secretary. But let me go to the Iranian threat.
I'll share it with you early on.
The Iranians keep running speedboats at our ships, and there is an article this week that they are trying to tempt us into shooting them. If the U.S. Navy sinks an Iranian gunboat, speedboat, will you stand behind the commander of that ship defending his sailors?
Look, we've been very clear. I've had this discussion with the commander. I've had this discussion with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We know what the guidance is, the rules of engagement. We've updated it in the last few weeks since since that provocative behavior by the Iranians. My forces know that if they feel threatened, they always have the right of self-defense, and I will certainly stand behind our men and women in uniform if they take that action.
Last question. Will it only be tit for tat? But if the Iranians actually engage us, threaten our sailors, will we be satisfied with sinking one ship, or will there be retaliation beyond that? Because we didn't do anything after they dropped the ICBMs on al-Assad. We just said, okay, time out. This time, will we say time out again?
Well, it's not. I don't look at things as a tit for tat. The question is, what do you need to do to send the right message and to restore deterrence? And I will tell you that with regard to the actions in December, January, we certainly restored deterrence.
Yes, you did.
A major player off the battlefield, a terrorist leader of a terrorist organization who is quite capable, and we've set them back considerably. And I always thought that was the right thing to do.
Secretary Esper, I appreciate your time. I hope you'll come back soon. I love the candor, and I love the clarity regarding the People's Republic of China.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you, Secretary. I am going to take Larry 3 segments.
Deter, and if necessary, fight and win against China. Fight and win against China.
The new Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. For those of you who are just listening, Secretary Esper and I talked for an additional 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going to play that in the third segment and have my guest, Dr. Larry Arnn, comment on it because it's important to the news of the day. But Dr. Larry Arnn is president of Hillsdale College, and I warned him about one specific subject today, which is Judge Sullivan and the attack on due process that is underway. And so you've tuned into the Hillsdale Dialogue, the last radio hour of the week. All things Hillsdale are found at hillsdale.edu, including all of our conversations dating back to 2013, hughforhillsdale.com. Dr. Larry Arnn is the president of that august institution, the Lighthouse of Sweet Reason in the North. It's also the Lighthouse of Sweet Reason in the shadow of the Capitol, where they have their graduate school in D.C., where they're still accepting applications. I'm afraid Dr. Arnn is threatening to come back to D.C. soon. Are you coming back to D.C. soon, Dr. Arnn?
Well, I hope to get there at least one day before it becomes legal.
You know, you're a non-compliant kind of guy, aren't you?
I just, I live in Michigan, and, you love to vaunt Ohio. Nobody can make rules like Michigan. We're just really good at it. There's a fact of the governor's 70-some, in 60 days, 70-some multi-page executive orders, and the fact now runs to 850 points.
You know what I am afraid of? I am afraid that she is surrounded by graduates of my alma mater, the University of Michigan Law School, who did not get jobs when they graduated because of the economy, and so they put them to work turning out executive order after executive. I haven't seen anything like Michigan. I mean, Mike DeWine down south, the great governor of Ohio, he brings out his medical. They talk about it. They kind of suggest to people what to do. They have some shutdown orders, but they are not going full draconian like Governor Whitmer is.
Well, we're going back to work now, but we're going back to work under rules, and so you can have the tomato soup, but not the lobster bisque, stuff like that.
I want to get to Judge Sullivan, but I got to ask you. You went to Hong Kong at the handover, did you not, with the great Bruce Hershenson?
I did.
Well, did you suspect that in 2020 the People's Congress would meet under the domineering hand of General Secretary Xi and impose a national security law that effectively repeals two systems, one country? It is a repudiation of every commitment they made in 1997.
Well, of course one suspected it. It turns out my wife's brother was the head of the Hong Kong office of a London law firm in the year that Lady Thatcher went to Hong Kong and agreed to hand the place over. And I happened to arrive there for the first time in my life the day after she left. And the city was papered with posters calling for a Bill of Rights. And Uncle John, my brother-in-law, we walked around town, and he told me about this stuff. And so I found out the name of Martin Lee, retired now, but the founder of the Hong Kong freedom movement in the face of this Chinese takeover. And I know him well. And I was with him on the day of the handover. And, of course, one was frightened they would do that. And, they're very clever. It's fun it's important. It's not fun. It's important to watch the Chinese government because that's sort of where we're going. So what did they do? There's this thing called the Legislative Council that the British had set up, and it was popularly elected. And it was, of course, very much in favor of civil liberties, and there's an overwhelming majority of the people in Hong Kong who are and who are worried about that. And so what they did was they changed the method of appointing it so that now there's a guaranteed majority of stakeholders. And stakeholders are people who run big companies who are heavily under Chinese influence and other types, and some percentage of it elected by the people. In the Legislative Council, the Chinese always have a majority. Well, they did that 10 years ago. And so step by step, now they appoint the executive. It's somebody friendly to them. And the Hong Kong people just won't stop. And so they're getting ready to put effectively martial law on the place.
It is martial law. That's what people need to understand. And you would be well advised to get the hell out of Hong Kong if you've been in a demonstration. I know that most of the people there can't. But they may go full Tiananmen Square, and I do not believe the Hong Kong people will go quietly into the night. Do my
my wise friend Tom West, politics professor here, he likes to say, you have to remember that force is very forceful. so they can do a lot to people, and they won't. The Hong Kong in this story, the great journalist on this is a woman on the Wall Street Journal editorial page by the name of Jillian Melcher, and she happens to be a Hillsdale graduate. I know her well, and she's just followed this, and she said she marvels at how they just won't stop the people of Hong Kong. And on the other hand, what's the end game for them? How do they win? It's very difficult to see. And, you just study the history of the Soviet takeover in the last 2 years of the Second World War, and then for 60 years later, of the Eastern European nations. And the truth is, they pled for help decade after decade. And there was no help coming, and there couldn't be. The Soviet Union was too strong. So they, alas, have been appointed as an example to the rest of us.
No, Dr. Arnn, people will not understand this, but it is of a piece. What happens in Hong Kong when their due process rights are denied them is exactly what is happening to General Flynn without the physical abuse. His due process rights have been violated. Among those due process rights are the Brady rules, which require exculpatory evidence to be provided to an accused before they make a plea. Now, General Flynn has pled guilty. There are reasons I suspect he did so that have to do with his family, have nothing to do with his believing himself guilty, but he did not know that he could win because they did not turn over the Brady evidence. And Judge Sullivan still will not release him, even though the Department of Justice has admitted grievous error and injustice. And so the D.C. Circuit, on a petition for a writ of mandamus from his lawyers, has now directed that judge to explain himself. And the intimation is clear that they will reverse him. What does this episode tell us?
Well, it's a big story. So first of all, if you start at the beginning, the courts and the government and the FBI and the police and everybody, they have the ability to use force. I mean, just like is being used on people of Hong Kong, and that much force if it's needed. So the question is, where does the authority to use that force come from? And the glory of the American Constitution, the thing about it that Winston Churchill admired unreservedly, is what we now call, in the common discourse, the theory of the unitary executive. But it's not a theory. The executive branch, all of it, reports to the president, and that means the Justice Department and the FBI, and that's legitimate because the people pick him and they can blame him. That's the argument in the Federalist. Well, the second step, after you have a unitary executive, is you have to separate that from the legislature, which makes the laws, and the judges, and the independent judiciary, which is mentioned 3 times in the 17 complaints against the king in the Declaration of Independence, is simply fundamental. And they're not executives, right? They're passive in this way. When the arm of the law reaches out and gets somebody, it has to take him before this guy who can't be fired, or girl. And that person, according to law, judges whether they can be detained or punished. And that's a sort of a final step in the execution of the law, and it's contrived to protect the rights of the individual. Well, judges they have to wait, right? They don't go seeking. They don't arrest people. They don't have the power to do that. They don't make a law. Of course, they do these days. So what Sullivan has done is the Justice Department, an executive branch agency operating, by the way, in ways that call into question its accountability to the elected executive. They bring charges against Flynn, and now they dismiss those charges, and Sullivan is keeping them alive. And that's sort of, in America, the official classes in America, the professorate, the media, the bureaucracy, way too many politicians, they all think in terms of power now, and they don't think enough in terms of responsibility. And so the judge, he just thinks this got in his court, he's got the power to keep it alive, even if the cooperating branches don't think so.
And the D.C. Circuit has said, wait a minute, because what he's done, and we'll talk about this after the break, deserves the description sinister. Very few things do. I don't go over the top. I don't believe in the deep state. But this is sinister. And we'll talk about it with Dr. Larry Arnn of Hillsdale College after the break. All things Hillsdale are collected at hillsdale.edu. All of our conversations dating back, I think, to 2013 are at Hugh for Hillsdale, beginning with Homer, and right up to a petition for a writ of mandate from the D.C. Circuit on the behalf of General Flynn. We'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt with Dr. Larry Arnn. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway, all things Hillsdale, which you can spend your entire weekend luxuriating in Hillsdale video courses at hillsdale.edu. Or you can go online to hughforhillsdale.com and binge listen as you walk, run, trundle to our conversations about anything from Hoover to this order that was issued yesterday, which I now read. Filed on May 21st before Judges Henderson, Wilkins, and Rao, circuit judges. Now, what's interesting about this draw, Larry Arnn, is that the three judges come from President Trump, President Obama, and George H.W. Bush. So we got a very diverse panel here. Upon consideration of the emergency petition for a writ of mandamus, it is ordered on the court's own motion that within 10 days of the date of this order, the district judge file a response addressing the petitioner's request that this court order the district judge to grant the government's motion to dismiss. C, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 48A, United States v. Fokker Services, 2016. The government is invited to respond in its discretion within the same day 10-day period. The court is directed to transmit a copy of this order to the district court per curiam. All three of them, no dissent. Yeah. What do you think's going on here?
Well, the one of those that I know, I don't know her well, but Naomi Rao is a tremendous woman. She was a law professor, and she was in the Office of Management and Budget in the Trump administration, and she is just a brilliant woman and a woman of the law, right? And so apparently they can see how crazy this is by the judge. You know, think of this. It's a good idea for people to put themselves in the place of the prosecuted, whether on the left or the right. Because if you ever are, you know, there's that old joke, a conservative is a liberal who's been mugged, and a liberal is a conservative who's been arrested. and so...
Yes!
So
we're all civil libertarians. We actually kind of believe this stuff.
Yeah, and that means that the case against you collapses. What happened in the Flynn case is it's been uncovered that there's a memo, handwritten memo, by a senior official in the FBI, and it says, effectively, what's our aim here? Are we going to get him to commit a crime? Are we going to get him fired? When are we going to go see this guy? In the White House, an advisor to the President of the United States. And you know, that means that they're fishing around, right? They're going to try to take this guy down. And you know, there's way too much of that in criminal and civil law, criminal law for sure these days. Anyway, that's why the case collapsed. And the Department of Justice, you know, in a lawsuit has produced that memo, and then they dismissed the charges against Flynn, to which he has, you know, pleaded guilty to some of them. And so now you're, you know, imagine it's me and you, Hugh, because we're co-conspirators, right?
Yeah.
We would be. I'm not like you. I believe in the deep state. I think we're it. That's what, because you know, if you read in the New York Times about the deep state, it's people like us. They just mistake that we're members of the state, but we're pretty deep, I guess. Anyway, we get our charges dismissed because there's malfeasance in the prosecution, among other things. Also, he's not guilty. Whether he's likable or not, it's a different thing, but he doesn't seem to me to be guilty of anything.
But then, you know, I was on with Al Sharpton this past weekend, and Al said, he pled guilty. And Al, you're a due process. You've been defending injustices. Injustices happen in our system. The left just can't believe they would ever happen to a conservative, or they wish to ignore them now that one has been revealed.
Yeah. And so we win our great victory. And, we near bankrupt ourselves, by the way, defending ourselves. Finally, we get a good lawyer, Sidney Powell, and she's whirlwind. And so the prosecution drops the charges, but now you're in the hands of the judge, and he's going to decide, right? And you know what the judge did when he invited amicus briefs, friend of the court briefs? He's inviting people to take the place of the prosecutor.
It's like putting you in the stocks in 17th century America, inviting people to throw tomatoes at you. We never have done this ever in America. More on it when I come back with Dr. Arnn, plus Defense Secretary Esper. Don't go anywhere. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. 33 minutes after the hour. Dr. Larry Arnn is my guest. It is the Hillsdale Dialogue. But Dr. Arnn has graciously agreed to prevent me being the subject of a cruise missile strike. I'm going to play the 4 minutes of my interview with Secretary Esper that did not air in the first hour now, so that I can keep my commitment to him. Then Dr. Arnn will comment on those 4 minutes, and therefore I will not be immolated by a stealth F-35 coming in low over the Beltway. This is Secretary Esper from 30 minutes ago. The new Secretary of the Navy was confirmed yesterday, thank goodness. I have been complaining, I'll put diplomatically, about the fact we don't have a plan for the 355-ship Navy that President Trump has promised repeatedly during the campaign and for 3 years. When will OSD let us see the plan? A real, actual nuts and bolts, this ship at this yard at this time to get us to 355, Secretary Esper?
Sure, we're working on that plan right now. I've been working closely between my internal think tank, if you will. The Navy obviously is working closely on this. We've brought in some outside experts. I want to make sure we have a future naval force that can meet the needs of deterring China, and again, failing that, fighting and winning. I think 355 ships is too few. I actually think we need a bigger Navy than that. I think its composition will look more different. It will be more and smaller type of surface combatants. And if you saw recently, Hugh, we just announced the purchase of a new surface combatant. I think we probably need more in terms of submarines. We need to move much more quickly on unmanned or lightly manned ships. And we certainly need a strategic deterrent. So, look, we have the best Navy in the world, and we're going to make it better. And I want to make sure we get that structure right, that future force idea. But it's got to have things like distributed lethality. It has to be survivable against a near-peer power such as China or Russia. And so it has to have certain attributes. So we need to be looking toward the future and make sure we build the fleet that we need moving forward.
Mr. Secretary, what date will we see the plan by?
Oh, currently right now they're looking to back brief me, the team internally, in July or August, and then I want to make sure I share it with the Hill and do those types of things. But look, we have a plan right now. It's called our 5-year defense plan. So what we have planned is what's going to continue. The shipbuilding plan is a 30-year plan. It's beyond 5 years. It's of uncertain value. But what I do hope to portray is the objective force that we need by 2045 to deal with the Chinese. And by the way, it's not just surface combatants, but we need to start integrating into that plan things like sea lift and other enablers that are crucial to the maritime fight.
I just think it's going to be an issue in the campaign that President Trump promised 355 and we haven't got a plan. But let me move on in our short time left.
Well, again, I think 355 Hugh is too few. I think we need more than 355.
I'll take that with a plan, Mr. Secretary. But let me go to the Iranian threat.
I'll share it with you early on.
The Iranians keep running speedboats at our ships, and there is an article this week that they are trying to tempt us into shooting them. If the U.S. Navy sinks an Iranian gunboat, speedboat, will you stand behind the commander of that ship defending his sailors?
Look, we've been very clear. I've had this discussion with the commander. I've had this discussion with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We know what the guidance is, the rules of engagement. We've updated it in the last few weeks since that provocative behavior by the Iranians. My forces know that if they feel threatened, they always have the right of self-defense, and I will certainly stand behind our men and women in uniform if they take that action.
Last question. Will it only be tit for tat, but if the Iranians actually engage us, threaten our sailors, will we be satisfied with sinking one ship, or will there be retaliation beyond that? Because we didn't do anything after they dropped the ICBMs on al-Assad. We just said, okay, time out. This time, will we say time out again?
Well, it's not. I don't look at things as a tit for tat. The question is, what do you need to do to send the right message and to restore deterrence? And I will tell you that with regard to the actions in December, January, we certainly restored deterrence.
Yes, you did.
A major player off the battlefield, a terrorist leader of a terrorist organization who was quite capable, and we've set them back considerably. And I always thought that was the right thing to do.
Secretary Esper, I appreciate your time. I hope you'll come back soon. I love the candor, and I love the clarity regarding the People's Republic of China.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you, Secretary. Dr. Arnn, what'd you make of his tone? We were talking about Iran there. You didn't hear the part about China, which aired last hour. The same kind of very blunt talk. What'd you make of that?
Well, put him and Pompeo together, and all of a sudden there's clarity.
Well, and they're two West Point guys. But the Navy gets screwed, though. I mean, they don't get the 355 ship plan. We got a little halfback feint there on the plan, don't you think?
Well, so first of all, I should mention, I know him a little bit.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Heritage Foundation for a while. And he was one of those guys hired to make the dang place run right. Fulner loved it. My friend Ed Fulner, who was the founder of the Heritage Foundation, loved to hire these military guys who know how to get stuff done. And the Esper was one of them for a while. Very good. Anyway, he's trying to do something. We're trying to do something that Winston Churchill tried to do. And we're in the same situation they were. There are growing naval threats to our dominant navy, as there was to Britain at the turn of the century. And when Churchill was First Lord of the Admiralty, 1911 to 1914. And so he had to do two things at once, and they're hard. He had to grow the Navy, and he had to change the Navy. And those two things are difficult to do. And that means he just talked about a 30-year plan. I think we don't know what kind of ships we're going to be building in 15 years or 20 years. And I think we don't know what kind of ships we're going to be building in 10 years. We do know what the threat is for the foreseeable future, and that is China is attempting to deny us access to the Eurasian continent, to the east side of it where they are. And that's our problem. The world has got smaller because of technology, so we're in exactly the position of Britain now. We're an island located between the land masses, and it's really just one landmass, Europe on one side and Asia on the other. If you add in Africa, which is close to Eurasia, that's 87% or 85% of the world's population. And so we're a sea power. We got to be able to get there. And that means our allies, Taiwan, and, that's the controversial one, but it's a great one, and Japan and South Korea and all of those are important. And we've got to be able to reach them militarily, or else our diplomacy will come completely apart.
Yeah, the Secretary and I talked about Taiwan in the part you did not hear because of the PRC, the CCP, put out a story in their Global Times, which is their Pravda, that says the Dongsha Islands belong to them. They don't. They belong to Taiwan. And that it's a strategically important location that the PLA has the capability of turning into an exercise into action if the Taiwan secessionists insist on secession. They're threatening to run landing. It's empty islands. They're called the Parscals by Japan and Taiwan. They're called Dongshu Islands by China. I asked him, what would we do? And he demurred. And I don't think we should demur. I'm not sure what we should do, but whatever it is, we ought to tell the Chinese we're going to do it.
Well, one of the worst things about you is that you're a good journalist, and so you keep asking him things he can't answer. You did that in that interview, right? Yes. What will we do if?
Yep.
And the right answer. I remember once Dan Rather was pressing Ronald Reagan soon after he became president in a Rose Garden interview. What are you going to do about Cuba? What if you do this? And what if you do that? What if they do that? And Reagan looked at him after, deferring on 10 questions, and he said, I rule nothing in and nothing out, but I do recommend they mind their behavior.
Well, you see, that is a perfect, because there are hypotheticals like, what if Martians land on the Earth, which are stupid. And then there are hypotheticals like the PRC has just threatened in their mouthpiece organization to land on the Parscals in August. What are we going to do? And on the spectrum of hypotheticals, the closer you get to reality, the more you ought to become less ambiguous. Because I believe it was Dean Acheson who said, Korea, meh. And then the North Koreans invaded.
It's a factual point. First of all, I believe in the Marshall Landing thing, by the way. We'll have to talk about that. But it's a factual point that we have military relations with Taiwan, and we have given them guarantees.
Yes.
And so it would be dynamite to state those, but that's a dynamite thing to do because they exist. And if China invades Taiwan and we don't do anything about it, that's breaking our word. and you know we should. There's a dance going on because China can, if it means it, it can take Taiwan and destroy it. And those people, I know a lot of people over there, I used to anyway, and they just think of if you encapsulate the story quickly. So Japan in the Second World War and in the 1930s, China was a mess, as it has often been in its very long history, and Japan invaded the southern part of it, and they worked that place over. The Imperial Japan was a very cruel nation. The Japanese Governor General of Taiwan, after Japan took that, he was asked by the New York Times in the 30s, "What's your policy toward the people of Taiwan?" And he quoted the Bible. He said, "I will whip them with scorpions."
Oh!
So Chiang Kai-shek is from the southern part of China, and Mao Zedong is from the northern part. And Chiang Kai-shek ran a movement under the influence of Sun Yat-sen, who is under the influence of American principles, a Republican movement, and the communists in the north. Well, the Japanese took away the home base of Chiang Kai-shek, and he was driven up north, and he was eventually beaten by Mao Zedong, and they ran for their lives to the island of Taiwan. And forever, for 50 years after the Second World War, they kept up the idea that they were the proper government of China mainland, and they actually had a legislature that most of its members still represented the districts that they represented in China, and they got old, of course, and so now there's been a transition, right? And there's there are people on the left and people on the right in Taiwan, but they all have one agreement, and that is we don't want to be governed by China. We don't want to be what's happening to Hong Kong.
Exactly. That's why Hong Kong is so relevant, because Taiwan is looking across the channel and saying to themselves, that's not what we want.
10 years ago, China was saying to Taiwan, you can trust us, let's unite, we'll treat you like Hong Kong. And Taiwan said consistent. And see, Taiwan, they have free elections, and they elect people whose platform is not to be part of China, and they elect them by overwhelming majorities. And if they elected the other party, they would be electing the same opinion. See, so there's no movement to reunite with China in Taiwan. Why would there be? And so now China, and China flexing its muscles has an effect. We were talking about the Navy. Well, the great news for us is when you're looking for allies around the perimeter, is that they like us because we're far away and we're not going to despotize them, even if they don't really like us. Whereas China, they fear. And the news is full of new reasons to fear China.
Absolutely. The first island chain is where our allies are. I'll be right back with Dr. Arnn. Don't forget, ReliefFactor.com sponsors this once in a while. I just have to do a quick reminder. ReliefFactor.com. The starter pack is $19.95. Go and get it. Dr. Arnn and I both believe in it. ReliefFactor.com. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined by Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. All things Hillsdale, collected at hillsdale.edu. Dr. Arnn, I want to finish this week talking about General Flynn, who has been on a 3.5 year odyssey. He sought to serve his country by becoming the national security advisor. He was entrapped. He was bludgeoned. I believe you said the prosecution is now the punishment.
Yeah.
That is General Flynn. Would you just take the last couple of... This is a big deal. This case is a huge deal, and I didn't pay enough attention to it. I want to admit error. I thought he lied. I thought he had been violated FARA. I thought he'd done a mistaken, legally, criminally wrong thing, but I have changed my mind.
Well, I mean, first of all, just remember, what's going on in America is that there's two ways of governing now, and one is according to the rule of representation grounded in human equality and consent, and the other is the government of expertise. And so, why is Fauci somebody who can opine intelligently about whether it's a good idea to go back to college or not, right? He what does he know? Because the effects of this thing are huge, of this shutdown, and the great majority of them are outside his competence. And, Winston Churchill was eloquent on this. So now...
and you are not deriding Dr. Fauci. He is within his competence superb.
I wonder.
I think so, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, he's a really big deal and all that, right? But I don't like him telling me whether we can have college. Or
I agree, but within
so now everybody in the government, because it's been, our mental climate has been transformed. We don't really think that all power proceeds from the people in any direct and ongoing way.
That is correct.
The FBI is a institution, and it deserves its independence. I asked a senior guy in the FBI one time, I said, independence from what? And, he paused. And I said, do you carry a gun? And he said, sometimes. I said, who gives you authority to do that? Shoot me, right? Is it the director of the FBI? Where did he get it? You see, that line of thought, right? And so now prosecutors, they can just make your life miserable. They can, I read somewhere today that, getting ready for this show, that Flynn has spent $3-4 million defending himself.
Yes.
Well, he's not a rich man, right?
No, he's an Army officer.
He has been punished already, right? And that's, I'm a prison reformer, and I'm a prosecution reformer, because the rights of the accused, the government's big and strong, and it's now more than half the economy.
You can't beat the government. It's all Hillsdale has, but very few people can beat the government.
Well, we know enough about government to know that no victory is long-lasting in that regard. If the country becomes a despotism, Hillsdale College will be destroyed. And I try to teach myself. I learned from Winston Churchill not to worry about things I can't control, but I do want the college to be strong and independent. I thanked the senior government official the other day in the wake of this mess for giving us new opportunities not to take any money from the government.
By the way, how's your application field at Hillsdale College? Are you doing fine?
Yeah, better than that. Yeah, we're gonna, if we don't know, of course nobody does, but if things stay as they are, and they probably will, we will have the best class we've ever admitted, and that's saying something.
That is. What is it saying?
It's, our Hillsdale College is pretty smart.
You don't like to brag much, but what it is saying is that amid the ruins, the strong institutions endured. When the earthquake came, the ones that were built with deep foundations have endured.
See, we're all talking about how this is a crisis for colleges. Well, it might be, but this hasn't cost us very much money. Why? Where would the cost be? Well, to teach on Zoom, you got to buy a bunch of technology. Well, we happen to have had that already because we teach these online courses, and so we haven't made any money on it. It's kind of just on the expense side. It's sort of a wash, but colleges are getting checks for $1 and $2 and $19 million.
Not Hillsdale.
Out of nowhere, right? And most colleges today, we don't get much of our budget from our students, and so we work hard. We want to be like the Marine Corps. It's very hard to get in, and we don't want much from you except everything you've got.
And for life. And for life, mind you. Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, has got a lot of lifers. They're all signed up at hillsdale.edu. If you do anything this weekend, go sign up for Imprimis. You'll have something arrive every month in your mailbox that you will treasure, actually reading a physical piece of paper from a real place on a map, even though it isn't that state up north. Dr. Arnn, thank you. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Generalissimo. Thanks, all of you. Do not miss the Monday Semper Fi Fun show, semperfifun.org. I'll be here on Memorial Day celebrating the men and women who have been injured in the service of this